What's up, metal and heavy music fans? This is Flight of Icarus from MetalTrenches.com. As always, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel because there's plenty more videos where this came from. Also, consider hitting up our Patreon. Today, I wanted to kind of combine my passion for metal music with my professional experience in mental health that I've been working on for over 10 years now, to illustrate a different concept and how it sort of plays out in the metal community right now, and that is the cognitive triangle. It's a pretty simple concept. We draw a little triangle here, and you've got thoughts, feelings, and behaviors make up the points, and it just shows how within all of us these things interact. So let's pretend this triangle represents us as the average metalhead. So beginning with thoughts, I think a lot of us experience this early period of thinking that I don't belong, they don't get me, that whole concept. And so when you have those thoughts, those lead to certain feelings of resentment and also some typical rebellion. And those feelings end up leading to specific behaviors, which in this case are very sort of counterculture behaviors, so to speak. So this can look like a number of things, including, wearing dark, scary clothing, playing loud, angry music, as other people put it, and then, of course, just in general, sort of rejecting social values and norms in any way that we can. So that covers sort of the individual level, but where this really gets interesting is where we see this play out with other people. So let's throw in another triangle representing other people, usually adults, or specifically using the 80s as an example, so the Tipper Gores, the evangelicals, etc. So when we engage in those countercultural behaviors, they have thoughts about those. And in this situation, it tended to be those people are bad. Those people are evil, they're devil worshippers, whatever. And that leads to feelings of revulsion and resentment. And fear is a very important one. And then as a result of those feelings, they engage in boycotts and protests and censorship to try to make those things stop. But the irony here is that by engaging in those behaviors, what are they doing to the metalhead's thought process? They're ultimately reinforcing it. They're reinforcing that idea of I don't belong. They don't get me. They don't. they're proving that true. So ultimately, this is reinforcing a cycle of conflict, and it's sort of closing a loop, and you're stuck in this place where nobody can get out, and it just keeps getting worse. And so the question comes up, did it work? Did their approach work? And I'd argue no, it didn't. Music is more vicious and vile than ever in the metal scene. It gave them a lot of free press, I think exposed a lot of people to it that wouldn't. And honestly, those parent advisory stickers, a lot of these bands wear it like a code of honor. So let's look at how this has shifted to today, though. I want to give another example around cancel culture. So I'm going to argue that a lot of people in the metal community have actually become sort of the Tipper Gore evangelical side of this argument. So let's put them on that side of the triangle. And then I'm going to move away just your typical average metalhead from this other triangle and replace it with things like socialist black metal, Tim Lambesis of As I Lay Dying, etc. What I'm seeing here is that these same dynamics kind of play out within these groups. Now, I want to pause and say that I'm not at all equating these behaviors. I'm definitely not trying to say that, dressing a certain way and playing a certain type of music is the same thing as, say, trying to hire a hitman to kill your wife or going to actual Nazi rallies, inciting violence against specific groups of people directly. They're not the same behaviors, but I'd still argue that this dynamic still plays out to the same outcome. Because if you look at it on a more extreme level, these people are still encountering that same situation where I don't belong, I'm trying to fit in with something, they don't get me, but that's still fueling that resentment and that rebellion, and they're engaging in even more extreme counterculture behaviors. And then when it swings back to the sort of hashtag cancel group of the metal community, they're engaging in that same thought process of these are bad people. They engage in that same revulsion and resentment and fear, which again leads to same outcome, boycott, protest, censorship, which in turn reinforces where that group is at on a more extreme level. So they engage in it more. And then on top of that, I'd argue that the cancel culture even takes it a step further in saying that they can never change. They can never redeem themselves. This is just over for you. Thus, the whole cancel thing. And that adds an extra element of hate. And so when they're engaging in these boycott protests and censorship and everything, not only is that group being fed by that outrage and it's reinforcing their initial thoughts, it's also leading them to think things like, why bother? Why bother to try to change? Because this group has already made up their mind that I can't, and they're never going to forgive me. They're never going to think any different from me, so I might as well just ride the wave. And so that resentment and rebellion builds to the nth degree, and what you get is even more extreme behaviors, and which further reinforces what the cancel culture people think, and it just goes round and round and round, and it doesn't ever get any better. It's a lose-lose situation, is the point that I'm making. So what we need to do is, on some level, people need to start reframing where they're at. And it's the job of both people, all the people involved, to be able to do that on either side. But I want to focus on what we can do as a metal community when we're running into these people. And that's challenging ourselves. And instead of engaging in that absolute thinking of they can't change, they can't redeem themselves, they're bad people, and falling into the same trap that those Tipper Gores and evangelicals were in the 80s, we need to approach this with more gray area, more questioning, and not giving in, but saying like, I have concerns. Can they get better? I'm not sure. And that leading to some healthy curiosity, healthy concerns, some cynicism, some skepticism there. We're not just allowing it to persist. We're not saying, okay, we're just going to let you in. Our behaviors then is that we're watchful, we're looking, we're assessing, we're engaging the situation. And I think that puts the people on the other side in a place of we're not feeding the outrage, so we're not giving that initial shock value that they may even be wanting, and we're putting them in a place of maybe I can do better. Can I do better? I'm not sure. What would the outcome of that be? Maybe I can change. Maybe there are things worth changing about my stuff. And so that leading to feelings of more motivation and also a healthy level of anxiety, because we don't want to get rid of it completely. It's good to have some anxiety to a place where it pushes you to try new things. That's where change happens. And so that increases our odds of the desired behavior. It's not always going to lead directly to the behavior, but it definitely increases the odds of it happening, and therefore that it reinforces us as an audience and a community to continue to reevaluate our thoughts about it. But ultimately, this leads to better chances of better outcomes for everyone. I'm not saying that we should ignore bad behavior. I want that to be really super clear here. What I'm talking about is I want to focus on outcomes instead of the behavior itself. Because if we're focused on outcomes, then we can come up with solutions that are actually going to be good for the community as a whole. And that's what it's all about, right? Like, that's what we're saying that we want. And if we actually want that, we need to do it. So can it work is the question that comes up, because some people say it's never going to. But I encourage you to Google Daryl Davis. There are plenty of videos and even a documentary on him. Here's a guy who's a black blues musician who has spent a good portion of his life going around and befriending actual KKK members, like high-ranking people, and has gotten them to a place where, because he's sitting down with them, he's listening, he's sitting in their own homes and just learning about them and hearing them out. And instead of getting in their face and screaming and boycotting and protesting, he's literally making friends with them to the point that many of them have given up their robes and thrown out the KKK, and they have changed. And so if that's not proof, I don't know what it is. But I find him very inspiring, so I encourage you to check that out. But yeah, that's just my overall thoughts on this topic. It's very important to me because I just have always seen the metal community as an inviting thing, a place where I can kind of join with misfit people and we can have a cool space together. So for it to continue to just fracture and subdivide and become this kind of toxic thing, and also as a mental health professional, knowing these dynamics on a deeper level and understanding the damage that it's creating and how it's not actually helping anything, it's making it worse. I just want to get this information and put it out there so that hopefully people can make better decisions. So interested to see what people think of this video. Please do subscribe if you haven't already, share it, like it, comment if you enjoyed it. Also comment if you didn't enjoy it and you felt like it was boring or you feel like I'm wrong. I'm totally open. I'm open to feedback. You won't hurt my feelings. I've got a pretty darn thick skin with the people I've worked with over the years. But that'll do it for today. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.